I'm Susan Appel, Executive Director of the Indie Learning Team, and we're thrilled today to have with us Dr. Gwen Lavert. Dr. Lavert is a reading specialist and has taught reading all over the world and is an education consultant and a children's book author. So we're so glad to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk about my favorite thing, which is literacy.
Yeah, well, tell us about, we know you're a big literacy advocate, and so tell us, what is the most important thing we can do to support literacy, and why are you so passionate about literacy?
Well, I think that literacy is the lifeline to everything that we do. There's nothing that we can be involved in that does not involve listening and speaking and reading and writing. It's just our lifeline. And I think there's so many children who need to be liberated. There's so many kids who are shackled. And so the liberation is very, very important to push them into the to read, to push them into realizing that there's so many things that they can learn from reading. So I think that that's my passion. And that's what I've been doing all these years.
Yeah, so what can we do? What is there the most important thing we can do to promote reading and liberate our kids' minds?
Well, number one is to oral language is what most of our kids do best. And I think that if we're reading aloud to them every single day, every minute, and we're talking with them about what we're reading and giving them a chance to make those connections, that is very important. So they need an adult in their lives who's reading to them and hooking them up to wonderful pieces of literature.
Now, I have seen you do a read aloud training and you read aloud. And, one of the things that we were struck with as adults in that training is how you brought in emotion and experience into the read aloud. Why is that important to make connections and ask questions and allow them to share their experiences while you're doing a read aloud?
Well, have you ever watched a child looking at a cartoon? They're so engaged. They like the action. They like the movement. They like the fact that they can stand back from the characters and then move into characters and really make those connections with who they are and maybe who they want to be. Well, that's what we need to do as whether we're volunteering, whether we're a teacher, whether we're a parent or grandparent, we need to engage our students into it. And emotions play a major role into who we are. It's a part of our spiritual side, it's a part of our soul side of our humanity. And so we're reaching out to touch of our children. And so that's why it's important for us not to just pick up any book, but a book that's going to touch the whole soul and to engage. When I said that Papa could not read, and Papa really wanted to read, and his son wanted to help him, and then his wife would stand with him at night and put her hand on his shoulder and said, "You can do this. You can do this." Those are actions that tears could bring tears to one's eyes because had an experience some way or the other, or something is to them to evoke an emotion experienced, or it could be a time thing that they're experiencing.
And I think that it resonates so much with me. There's a quote about books being windows and mirrors, that we need to see ourselves in them and then also see other people in them as well. And you talk about cultural transmission and why that's so important. Can you tell us, what is cultural transmission and why is it so important for our kids?
Well, cultural transmission is the you understand, or the person who is transmitting understands the background of the children or the adult that they're working with. They understand where they've come from a historical point of view. They understand where they are today. And so they also understand that they want to move person to change or give this person an opportunity to change. So we're looking at the values that they bring, the culture brings to them. And so you're transmitting, you're aware of that. Anytime you're that person, you're aware of where they've come from, where they want to go. Maybe they don't know where they want to go, but if you're looking at their potential, you know where you can take them. And so you're always looking at hotels, songs, all kinds of things that are part of what they do. And you're bringing that to the forefront. So that's cultural transmission. So if I'm going to read a story, I make sure that all the kids that I am with, they can see themselves. They, as you said, a mirror. They can mirror themselves and whatever it is that we're talking about.
So how do I make sure that I do that, that I have this cultural transmission about my own culture, but also about a culture that isn't my own? And why is that important that we create those connections between different cultures?
Okay. If we're talking about the whole idea of liberation, liberating people, and we're talking about their human side, then that's what we're going to try to do. Is not just about my culture, but I want them to, as you said, mirror themselves and what we're talking about. So I'm going to provide games and to provide stories that they connect with. I'm going to provide questions where we can talk about things and we can hear different ideas. For example, if you and I were talking, we could have a book and we can have questions where you're connecting with your culture, I'm connecting with my culture, and then we're talking, we're sharing. And so important that socialization is important to make sure that we can become big friends once we know more about who we are. We can work closer together the more we know about each other. So that culture transmission is so important in everything that we do.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I mean, books are so powerful. Actually, just yesterday, I was with a group of kids and I said, I'm going to read you a book. And the little girl turned to me and said, will you ask me questions afterwards? Because that's what we do, when we read
Yeah.
a book and then we talk about it. That engagement is so important. And kids really love it. They love to share their knowledge and be experts and learn. And they're
Yeah.
so curious. Do you have, before we go, a favorite reading experience or thing that you like to do with kids while you're reading?
Well, yesterday I went to the library with my two grandsons and I read Love You Forever. And we did the song, I love you forever, I like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And so when I looked up, they were next. One was on one side, one was on the other side, and they were close in where I could just had to put the book down because I remembered the story, and we just pulled in and just to each other, just really, really close. And then as I shared with them, the father when he was a baby and the father when he was an adult. And I said, one day, right now, you're a little one and you're going to be a man soon. And then I showed the picture of the mama when she was young, holding the baby. And then I showed him holding his mama. And just those relationships, because both of them love to snuggle up with their mom and just listen to the story. And then she does this morning thing where they do a lot of kissing, a lot of hugging. And so that book was relevant to them and to the experiences that they have every single day. So that Love You Forever is an old book, but it's still one that kids still love today. And I just watched how they just were drawn into that book. And then they were drawn into me because the love was all around. So not just waiting until the end of the story to ask questions, but pivotal points into beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and then at the end. Kids are used to teachers at the end of the story asking questions. But if you've read the story and you can move away from it and then start telling the story, is a lot more powerful. So I readers read the story many times to work with their voice inflections, to know exactly those critical points to stop and say, have you ever experienced that? Has this ever been done to you? What would you do if? So that's important. So that just happened yesterday.
Well, yeah, and it's just amazing the experiences you have with books and how much you learn about each other. We learned yesterday in our book that when you eat broccoli, you're eating the flower of the broccoli because we were reading
Yeah.
about plants. And they were just said, I can't wait to go tell my mom that I eat a flower. So you have inspired me to make sure that we're engaging in the book. And she also held up this book. It was a book about plants and it had a black girl on the front. She said, "That's me. I planted a garden." And so just to work really hard to make sure that we're seeing ourselves in books, but
Exactly.
everyone's seeing themselves, and we're also seeing other people and the power of that.
And that's cultural transmission when that is happening. That
Well,
is cultural transmission.
thank you so much. We really appreciate you talking with us, and we'll hope to continue the conversations about how we can all bring your passion to reading to all of our kids.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, Susan. Have a great day.
Thank you.